So for those of you who don't know, I am good friends with Jacob Buds, aka XP to level 3, right here on YouTube, and we play along with some other awesome people on Saber Dice, which you can also find right here on YouTube, link down below. I mention this because today I'm making a bit of a response video to his video on flanking, because in his video he said some things that I totally agree with, but he also said some things that I do not agree with. Specifically, during his video, he talked about the way that Guy Sklanders from How to Be a Great GM and I handle flanking, and then he went on to dismiss my method and talk about why he didn't like it, listing off several reasons, and then following it up with his own system to introduce flanking into his Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition games. And being the argumentative nerd that I am, I thought that I would demonstrate why Jacob is simply wrong about flanking. So people watching this can have some context with me paraphrasing. Jacob said that he loved flanking in Pathfinder and Starfinder and the way that combat felt in those systems compared to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Jacob said the optional rule of flanking in 5th edition is broken because it's too good and it costs nothing. And I would agree. He then said that I use a +2 modifier, which is slightly incorrect as I use a +1 modifier, and that he didn't like it, and his reasons were as follows. It was too hard to track. It de-incentivizes flanking because it isn't enough, even though he thought I used a +2 at that point. That it's just as bad as not being there, that D&D 5e was built around advantage and disadvantage, and numbers won't work or will break bounded accuracy. He then proposed a system of requiring his players to give roleplay reasons to move up and flank, accompanied by skill checks in the heat of the moment. He expands on this further a bit, and I, of course, have linked his video down below for further context if you want it. Okay, Jacob. Let's start by saying that I love you, and I know that we tease you for not being great at math because you were homeschooled, but the reality is, while this has nothing to do with me teasing you, and yes, I think you're a very intelligent person who at 21 is their own boss with a growing business, the reality is that you don't like what Guy and I do with flanking because you don't understand the math, and at least that's what my gut is telling me. You are approaching this from the right side of your brain with how it makes you feel. You feel like the bonus isn't enough. You feel like it's too hard to track. And you feel like Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is only built around advantage and disadvantage. I, on the other hand, am left-brained, okay? I'm very highly analytical. I don't evaluate things on how they make me feel. In fact, I rarely use feelings in any of my life decisions. I really just look at the math and the logic. I only value the overall logic. And that's why I use a simple system of +1 on attacks. So let me shine a light on some of the math so you can see why I think you're wrong to so quickly dismiss and discount my approach to flanking. First, we need a sort of control, a simple and easy to understand set of numbers to work with. So for this example, I'll use a simple level 1 fighter with 14 strength, wielding a long sword with dueling for their fighting style. This will give us a +4 to hit at level 1. Now we need an AC for him to target, but one that is fair and not cherry-picked for a higher or lower AC just to swing the numbers to a more favorable position point. In the Dungeon Master Guide on page 274, we're presented with a table of averages for monsters and NPCs. We'll take a CR of the same level as our fighter, so a CR1, which appears on average to have an armor class of 13. So with some simple math, we can see that on average, our level 1 fighter has a 60% chance to hit his target. Okay, let's look at the rest of the numbers. If we're gonna give that same fighter a +1 flanking bonus, that would increase their chance to hit by a simple 5%. A +2 would give it a 10% boost to hit. Advantage would increase the likelihood by a whopping 24% to 84% total. However, adding a +1 to that advantage would only increase it by an additional 3.7% to 87.7%, and a +2 would increase the already high advantage just another 7% for a total of a 91% chance to hit with each swing. Whew. Now, before we analyze the numbers for this and what it means, let's quickly look at the level 5 fighter so we can see how this scales and adding in extra attack begins to affect everything. For our level 5 fighter, we have chosen to increase his strength with his level 4 ASI. This, along with his increased proficiency bonus, will now give us a +6 to hit. For our monster, let's again grab the same CR as our character's level. Looking at the AC, we have an average armor class of 15. So what does this do to the numbers now? On each of our individual attacks, the numbers have had a completely parallel shift. They remain exactly identical to the percentages we had at level 1. However, they don't tell the whole story, because we should see what they look like to hit just once now that we can make several attacks. And what do our chances look like to hit with both attacks with each of these variant rules? We need to make sure that whatever we decide doesn't break the game offensively. With our second attack from extra attack, for at least one hit to succeed, we now have an 84% chance with a standard attack, the same as our previous advantage attack. The +1 flanking bonus on each would drive that up to an 87.7% chance, and a +2 would give us a 91% chance to score at least one hit against our foe. With advantage on both attacks, we now have a 97.44% chance to hit at least once. Advantage and a +1 only brings that up to a 98.5% chance, and a +2 flanking bonus with advantage on both attacks would give us a whopping 99.2% chance to score at least one hit. And the chances to hit with both, I think, tell the best story for overall balance, with a 36% chance to hit with both attacks normally, a 42.25 with a +1 flanking bonus, and a 49% chance with a +2 flanking bonus. Advantage drives that up significantly to a massive 70.56% chance to now hit with both attacks, while a +1 flanking with advantage only increases that to a 76.91% chance, and a +2 with advantage would give us an 82.81% chance to now hit with both attacks. Oh, wow, that is a lot of numbers. So what do they all mean, and why do I, knowing these numbers, choose to give out a simple +1 flanking bonus for my Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition games? Simply put, because I find the set of numbers and percentage chances with a +1 flanking bonus to be the most appealing on how much incentive flanking should give. I also believe it to have the most resemblance to 3.5 and Pathfinder percentages, and thus fairly balanced overall. Again, that's percentages, not the straight integer increase. Now, I'm gonna be a little mean to Jacob here. Jacob, I love you, okay? I just disagree with some of the things you said. And before you get mad, just remember, you started it when you were so quickly dismissive of what I do with flanking. First, you said this.
The obvious solution that I know Cody and Guy and a lot of other DMs that I've known use, just say it's a +2. The problem with that is that it's kind of lame and a little bit hard to keep track of, and also it can be argued a little more here and there. In practice, from what I've seen, it's just kind of like, what it does, it kind of de-incentivizes people to flank because it's just going to get a +2. This whole +2 thing works if you like it, but I mean, it's just as bad as it not being there whatsoever. A +2, however, is like, that's like your grandma being like, okay, take a cookie and go and leave me alone.
Oh boy. This is downright illogical, simply not supported by the math, and in fact proven to be the opposite with math if you are as big of a fan of flanking in combat of the systems for Paizo, Starfinder, and Pathfinder games as you said you were in your video.
Combat's a really tricky thing to pin down because you want it to be simple for newer players, but you also want it to be complex for seasoned ones. And while I really like Pathfinder and Starfinder's combat because of the amount of things the game gives rules for you to do, in the years that I'm coming to play 5th edition, I'm starting to realize how boring the combat gets sometimes.
Let's examine for a moment the Pathfinder fighter and their 2-hit chance. The Pathfinder fighter has a 2-hit bonus or base attack bonus with a difference of 19 points in total from level 1 to 20. A +2 flanking bonus would be the equivalent of a 19.04 efficiency increase in character accuracies from level 1 to 20. This doesn't even begin to take into account how insanely high stats can get in these systems as they get well into the 40s and higher, further diminishing the +2 flanking bonus's overall impact. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the proficiency bonus climbs from a +2 to a +6, with a difference of just 4 from levels 1 to 20. A +1 flanking bonus would, on average, from level 1 to 20, be an efficiency increase of 25%, 6 full percentage points higher than 3.5 or Pathfinder's +2 flanking impact. And when and if we look at bounded accuracy for stats and just how low even magic sword bonuses are compared to 3.5 and Pathfinder, this gap only widens, furthering the difference in impact that a +1 flanking bonus in D&D would have versus the +2 flanking bonus in 3.5 and Pathfinder that you claimed you loved. So I think it's completely fair to say that if your stance is that you like 3.5 and Pathfinder combat and flanking rules, and in the same video say that my +1 homebrew rule isn't enough of a bonus, that statement is simply illogical. And I will consider your first objection point debunked due to the math. As far as the too hard to keep track of, I'm sorry, but if you think a simple +1 flanking bonus is too hard to keep track of, and you say you enjoy 3.5 and Pathfinder, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just going to consider that one debunked as well and write it off to you not really meaning it. I'll consider that part of you not really scripting your videos and shooting off the cuff, which kudos to you. I can't do that anymore. You didn't really mean it. I get that.
And while I really like Pathfinder and Starfinder's combat because of the amount of things the game gives rules for you to do, it's a +2. The problem with that is that it's kind of lame and a little bit hard to keep track of because of the amount of things the game gives rules for you to do, and a little bit hard to keep track of, and a little bit hard to keep track of, and a little bit hard to keep track of.
The next big argument you had is one that I see commonly, and I think is another one of those things of, well, I heard it and I feel like it is true, even though it isn't. And that's when you said this.
I'm not saying that all DMs are going to do that. They're just going to rope everything into being +2s. But 5th edition isn't built around a number system. It's built around the whole advantage-disadvantage system. It's either flanking gives advantage or it doesn't.
This whole bounded accuracy thing and trying to have it be some fragile ecosystem that will immediately self-destruct if you start adding in a number or two is just bogus. Want proof that Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition does in fact use number modifiers? Let me direct you to page 196 of the player's handbook with cover. That +2 modifier and +5 modifier can be stacked with advantage and disadvantage. Or what about Bless? That stacks with advantage and disadvantage. Valor Bards, and on and on. If you're not convinced yet, just look at the math. People are so worried about adding in any modifiers that will instantly break their game to the point that they would rather run advantage and disadvantage for flanking. But a +1 modifier only gives an additional 5% improved chance to hit versus advantage, which is an additional 24%. And adding that with a +1 with advantage is just a 3.7% jump. I mean, no matter how you slice it, mathematically, it just doesn't support the idea that it's going to break the game with bounded accuracy. And if anything, without advantage, the simple +1 mod will be significantly more consistent. Now, I want to talk about a couple of points that you made that I completely agree with. You said two things: that you think flanking should be in the game because you feel like it should be easier to hit someone if you start to surround them. And I totally agree. It's illogical and immersion breaking for me if 6 people attacking a bugbear are basically just like one person attacking the bugbear. That's dumb. And you said the biggest problem with flanking in 5e is that it doesn't cost anything. And you're totally right here as well. Because they took out attacks of opportunity and replaced them in 5th edition with opportunity attacks, getting into position for flanking is free. And that doesn't feel right. But that's exactly why I use a +1 modifier, because there is not a perfect solution to this conundrum. Advantage is a 24% swing, and that's way too much if it doesn't cost anything. And giving someone a 5% boost still gives heads-up smart players a reason to move and evaluate their board positioning instead of simply standing there.
In the years that I'm coming to play 5th edition, I'm starting to realize how boring the combat gets sometimes.
Also, I want to talk about why I like this better than what you proposed, which was to have players looking for flanking bonus give you a description and make a skill check. Because you feel like making them do this now adds a cost to get flanking. But the problem is that it simply doesn't. You're not asking them to spend some of their action economy. you're giving them a skill check for free, which, by the way, normally takes an action to do. And at the end of the day, it's just a random die roll. It doesn't cost anything. You also think that it makes combat more interesting, which I will subjectively disagree with. Describe how you flank them. I tumble up behind them and stab them in the gut. I tumble up beside them. I move up and distract them. I move up and distract them. I move up and slide up and try to hit them. It's just a random die roll at the end of the day. Because it's that same argument that would create more roleplay as people who think that power gamers ruin the game. Just because you force RP into the game doesn't mean that roleplay in combat for games that use modifiers would have it be absent. There is no reason in a game that's using the rules that I'm suggesting still can't have the same player say, I tumble up and try to stab him in the gut. It's just not baked in with the die roll and thus doesn't slow down the game by making that skill check because it's a simple +1 modifier. And what about NPCs? Do they have to make some skill roll every time they flank? To speak candidly, that sounds like it would be mentally taxing on the Dungeon Master to constantly have them do that. In battle, I try to mix in cool stuff that my monsters and NPCs do in my descriptions about maybe 2/3 of the time. This is a heat of the moment. The second bugbear comes crashing in on the two of you and raises his club up high in an attempt to crush your head in. And then I roll. If he's flanking, I give him a +1 to that and I keep combat moving. I don't want to have to stop and look at what skills are on the bugbear's stat block and figure out which ones aren't and try to come up with what their athletic score should be if it isn't on their sheet. I want to do what I think you are trying to accomplish. Keep combat descriptive, interesting, and most importantly, moving.
Realize how boring the combat gets sometimes.
Now, I've been thinking a lot lately about that Congo line of death that flanking causes. If people watching this are unfamiliar, that's that long line of people flanking, basically like a checkerboard. And that's always a fair criticism. One way I've been thinking about correcting this is with a flanking +1 method. Not to be confused with the +1 modifier, but in short, if flanking requires you to be completely 180 degrees from your ally, then how hard would it be to track at the table if you said it was the direct opposite square, just like it is now, plus the immediate adjacent squares to that square? If people are interested in mixing it up further, and I would suggest this more for groups that are experienced and, to be frank, clever enough not to be overwhelmed instantly, but you could even change the direct flanking square as a +2 modifier and each immediate adjacent as a +1 modifier. Now, I'm not doing these things at the moment as my +1 mod has seemed to be quite enough, but I intend to play around with both of these a bit and see if they feel better, knowing that the math behind both options is still solid. So there's the reason why I actually use a +1 flanking mod. It's simple, more consistent, a larger percentage bump than other systems like 3.5 and Pathfinder. It doesn't break bounded accuracy, and while it doesn't cost anything, no system I've seen actually does. It doesn't slow down the game, and it rewards players who play smart, as any good combat system should do. And I can't say enough about consistency. Advantage is a big deal. Jumping your average chance to hit by 24% is huge. I don't think giving it out for just flanking like the standard optional rule is balanced at all. The swing is too big. Giving it out after a free skill check doesn't make much of a percentage difference either. And even if a player or monster manages to stack advantage with a modifier, the difference is smaller than the modifier alone, which makes that math that much more beautiful. Now, before I wrap up this video completely dismantling Jacob Buds and redeeming what I do at the table from where he called me out, I want to say that Jacob is awesome. His channel is amazing. If you are a regular viewer here or a subscriber, stop what you're doing after this video and please go subscribe to XP to Level 3 Jacob's D&D channel. I've put a link to it down below. You know, even though he didn't do that for me or Guy, what a dick. What do you guys think? Have I convinced you yet? How do you handle flanking? Do you think you might try out the different methods that I suggested at the end of my video? Have you already implemented Jacob's suggestion? Was this video too savage? Do you think I successfully crushed Jacob's soul into dust like I secretly hoped to? Let us know down below. I, of course, want to give a huge thank you to all of the amazing patrons over at welcomeadventures.com. Guys, it's because of you that I can keep doing this, and so for that, I'm so grateful. If you guys like what I do here, you want to support more content like this, welcomeadventures.com is a great way to support the channel. We've got tons of cool rewards over there, like you can jump in a one-on-one coaching meeting with me and talk about your D&D campaign or your Starfinder campaign or whatever you got going on. We have patron games over there, so if you guys want to game with me, I might be adding a new game over there. You guys can check that out if you guys want monthly maps, or for $5, you can join our monthly hangout. We talk for an hour. I'm in it. A whole bunch of people are in it. We just talk about a bunch of cool stuff, and it's only $5. So it's a great way to support the channel if you guys want to snag some rewards for yourself. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I would love to have you subscribe. Every week, mostly, I put out new videos on DM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, just hit that subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.